Testing. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Let me know if you can hear me. Hi, everybody. So extra. Hi, everybody. Happy Monday. Yes. A day after Easter. Can we say this is Holy Monday too? I don't know. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. And you know, I hope it was peaceful and you got some downtime, some quality time for yourself, for your family, for your friends, and we're going to have a good show. So, the judge will be up shortly. You know, he takes his time because he has horrible Wi-Fi. Yes, he does. Um, Thank you, Halamel, Big Marcus, Mia, Thomas, Walter, Sylvia, Spooky, James, Felicia. Good evening, everybody. Happy Monday. So listen, while we wait for him to come on, I do my little monologue. And tonight's monologue is going to be on aging. But before we get into the monologue, let me tell you guys what we're going to be talking about. Shannon Sharpe. Yes, honey, he is the main topic tonight. Yes, he is, because he's trending like crazy. And of course, we are approaching it from a legal aspect, i.e., Judge Joe Brown, because this is not so much, he doesn't really like to do the gossipy tea thing. And I want to be different too. So I kind of want to approach it from the, celebrity uncensored aspect of it, the legal aspect. So of course we have to talk about Shannon Sharpe and that drama, that debacle. And listen, I'm kind of disappointed in women. I'm kind of disappointed in women because women go through a lot in society. We go through a lot. We are one of the weak links. I mean, we're strong in certain aspects, but we are prey. We're prey. So women sometimes do antics. We don't know the truth, but Shannon Sharpe released a statement and he released some receipts via his lawyer. And of course, we're going to talk about Carmelo Anthony. We have updates with that. Yes, we do. Now, this trial, the trial probably won't start until 2026. The grand jury, the DA said, is not going to happen until June, the earliest. It could be later. So everybody's doing a lot of speculation, right? So tonight, when we talk about the Carmelo Anthony case, I want to approach it from what we don't know. I wrote the question down. What we don't know about the Carmelo Anthony case. And that's very important because it's a lot we don't know. And legally, how does that play right about now? It's different avenues, different scenarios that this can play out. And then we also have to talk about this, what's his name? Derek Alexander from Next Generation Action Network, called AKA the Al Sharpton of Texas. We got to talk about him because he's running around here talking about something. He's suing people. Well, one particular woman, I think her name is Sally Fields, and what's going on with that? So they had a failed Protect White Americans rally over the weekend. Shout out to all the white Americans, all you white people in Texas. Shout out to them because they seen the bullshit from the jump, and nobody showed up, but maybe 5 people. So shout out to white people tonight for not falling for the okie doke, no matter how you feel about this case. But yeah, shout out to the white people for not falling for the okie doke. Sarah Fields, yes, that's her name. Did I say Sally? Sarah Fields, that is her name. And the Pope died. Yes. It's funny though, because he died today, the day after Easter. And apparently today is the birthday of Rome, right? So I don't know. He's been sick for a very long time. For a very long time. I don't want to call the judge, but I am going to call him because I need to know where he's at. So he's been sick for a very long time and he died. He was 88. Okay. He must be coming on because it's going straight to voicemail. Do we care? A lot of people care, but apparently, why was Antichrist trending on X? Because there have been conspiracy theories about the Vatican and Satan. Honey, I seen that movie The Almond 1, 2, and 3. So yeah, so we're gonna talk about that. And of course, Trump news. Trump news. I don't know what is going on with Pete Hegseth, but I don't, Trump is standing by his man apparently, but every other week or every month is something coming out of that Department of Defense. They're calling it now Signal Gate. I'm like, if you got a leak the first time dealing with that Signal app that apparently is supposed to be so secure, how about you just stop sending top secret information via Signal Gate? I don't know. And we have some other news, right? Because the Trump news is going around the world, to Africa, to Harvard, to the birth rate, and to DOJ. We are not talking about Kanye West. He needs help. I'm just going to say that, but I'm not talking about Kanye West. So anyway, here's my monologue. Aging. Um, we all going to age. We're aging every day. From the time we are born, we are aging, right? Somebody says, it's a saying going, from the time you're born, you're dying, some mess like that. But then it gets to a certain point in your life, because you kind of like, when you're aging from the time you were born until maybe 35, 40, I would say 40, it's like a cutoff point, because 40 and up, that's when you're aging, right? And I start to see little different things going on with my body internally and outwardly. Particularly like my face. Now, granted, yes, I have to lose weight. But there are certain things that women, if you guys didn't know, oh, women, like the neck for women gets different. It could get like a little wrinkly, but if you're overweight, you'll get like lines. And then, so I'm concerned that when I lose the weight, I don't want to have a wrinkly neck. I don't want to have this. I got to get this sucked out, and I need to lift this just a tad bit. So, yeah, I have an issue with aging. Like, I do want to age gracefully, right? And sexy. So it requires a lot of investment, which means a lot of money for women. Men are different. Y'all, when men age, you guys, y'all don't care. What is this? You guys don't care, because you feel as though that as long as you have money and you have status, women are going to flock to you. Well, women only flock to you because of your money and your status, and you're going to be spending money on women. They don't flock to you because you sexy. No. Uh, Men age worse than women. Now, there are some men that do look good as they age because they take care of themselves. But men think that the older they get, they can still run around and grab women of any age, especially younger women. And so that's their like midlife crisis, which is a real thing for men, because a woman 25 do not want a 55, 65, or 75 humping on her. Yes, I'm going there, Charles. I'm going there. Don't do what? Don't do it. Like, don't do anything to my face. Well, I'm not. It's just, invasive cosmetic surgery. But even 45, girls in their 20s look at got people in their 40s as older. They don't want wrinkly, out of shape, pot belly. They just don't. When they could have someone in their own age group that has the stamina and the abs and the tight ass, and they're still going through the same drama. But that's men. My focus is women. Is something go there, please? Yes. So it's so women, yes, we go through menopause. We're going through menopause. I'm in perimenopause, and I love the fact that more women of my generation and older are finally starting to talk about it. Because me growing up, I heard about it, I knew what it was, but women always dealt with it. But now, this generation, my generation right now, we are talking about it. We're doing stuff about it. We're living our best lives. We're doing hormonal replacement. Some women are getting testosterone injections. Yes, women have testosterone. We need it, not as much as men. And we're just investing in ourselves, which is great, right? And we need to be educated. So it is a difference from women and men aging, but women, we are more realistic, which is why we invest in ourselves, not just for a man to accept us and like us. No, it's to make us happy. And which is why women outlive men. Which is why when men get old and they're trying to run around out here in the streets and then they get sick and they don't have nobody to take care of them, then they be wanting a woman to take care of them. Where's he at? I think he's having a hard time getting on. Give me a second. Let me text him. Dana, what's a woman? Me, I am a woman. Um, I'm texting him to see where he's at. Oh boy. What is this? Safari couldn't open a page service. Oh my God. Give us a second, guys. Cause he's constantly having a problem. Like use Google. Don't there he goes. Were you having a problem coming on? Or you were just telling me that?
No, I sent you a screenshot of what I was getting.
I was texting you to tell you to use Google and not Safari.
I can't use Google.
Why?
My phone isn't set up for it, and right now I can't add apps to it because the hacker has the.
That hacker, you had that hacker for over a year. And
I know I
you
have,
to
and
do
there's
anything
nothing
about
I can
it.
do about it other than ditching everything on the phone because I can't get in to add an app without his permission.
Well, you could. We already came up with a solution. Everybody,
It doesn't work. I'm not going to
you know,
throw
get a
away.
new phone.
I know, but still, as long as I have the same phone number, I've got the
Get a
same
different phone
problems.
number.
Well, yeah, but then I have to lose all that 20 some years of data.
Let
So I'm
it
trying to
go.
work around that. Now,
Well,
now I'm on. So
oh, turn your phone so it could be
I
wide.
will. Now,
Okay. So let me read this. S. Cobra, she says, I don't wear makeup. I keep it natural and take my vitamins. I'm tall, so my weight stretches out. I work in healthcare, so I see everything you're saying. Yes. See, okay, here's the thing. I need to get back on my vitamin regimen. And I am. I'm gonna start back on my vitamin D, because I have not been taking vitamins in over a year. Shame on me. And if you're tall, yes, the if you gain weight, it does flow differently. I'm overweight and I'm about to do some things that um I'm not going to tell my secrets, but I'm getting in shape now. So yeah. Thank you, Cobra. How are you doing tonight, Judge?
Hmm?
I said, how are you doing tonight?
All right, I'll manage. Had a lot to do today, but I got most of it done.
Okay, that's good. Women outlive men because they do not deal with the stress of men due to the hard jobs they do. Flip the script and you will see. That has a lot of truth to it. It does. So, but the thing is though, because you do harder jobs, you don't keep up with your health care. So not only are you doing harder jobs, which may require more stress, but women have stress too. You don't do anything to alleviate the stress, i.e., as checkups. You don't. All right, let's get into the Pope. He died.
Easter.
Pope Francis, he was the 266th Pope of the Roman Catholic Church, passed away on Easter Monday, April 21st, 2025, at the age of 88 due to a stroke followed by heart failure at his Vatican residence, Casa Santa Marta. The Vatican confirmed his death, and a global community, including political leaders like President Donald Trump, has begun mourning. The process to elect a new pope, known as the conclave, is expected to begin soon. So, we briefly spoke about this earlier, and Antichrist was trending. And also, so now they're talking about replacements. And there are a couple of Black African bishops that is in the running, which would be the first. Um, but why do you think Antichrist was trending?
Some people apparently didn't like this last pope and some of his policies.
Yeah,
Seems he was supporting some things that a lot of the rank and file did not like.
pull your camera up. Why you take the hat off? Somebody said you look good in the hat, which you do.
Well, I might put it back on.
You should. So yeah, it was something that I want to play regarding the Pope. So what are your thoughts on what happened?
Well, then I just moved the stand that I have the camera on up.
Yeah.
What are my thoughts on what now?
On this Pope that passed?
I'm not a Catholic and ain't my business. Whether what he was doing with the policies that affected the rest of the world. Well, it is what it is.
He was more, I would say, of a liberal type of Pope.
Well, it looks from the complaints or the remarks I'm reading, he was trying to normalize certain things that some people don't want normalized. So
Mhm.
there you go.
I want to play this clip here.
The Fourth Revolution, terrorized by Klaus Schwab and the family of international finance, find in Bergoglio not a neutral spectator, which would itself already be an unheard of thing, but actually a zealous cooperator who abuses his own moral authority in order to support a destra outside the church the project of the dissolution of traditional society. While adepts are within the church, he pursues the project of the demolition of the church in order to replace her with a philanthropic organization of Masonic inspiration. And it is scandalous. This applies to both, to civil and ecclesiastical world, confirming the pactum celeri, the criminal conspiracy between the deep state and the deep church. It seems to me that in this conspiracy, the role of the Jesuit has been decisive. It is no coincidence that, for the first time in history, a religious of the Society of Jesus is seated on the throne of Peter.
I take it he's anti-Trump.
And I think he was anti this Pope. So he was an excommunicated.
Anti-Masonic stuff, which
Right.
gives me a personal little stake in it since I am Masonic. And I think what he's inferring is in great error. But anyway,
Well, he's an excommunicated Archbishop Vigano,
yeah, I know who he is. But anyway,
a Jesuit Freemason working hand in hand with Klaus Schwab on demolishing the church according to the whims of the deep state. He was not a friend of the world. The Pope wanted the Great Reset, but were stopped. It is a coincidence that Klaus Schwab stepped down right as the Pope died. So I guess that's starting to make a correlation with what is this? Why is it not going back? Okay. I guess they're trying to make a correlation with the deep state and the deep church, and the conspiracy. But that's been going around for decades, probably centuries. But isn't it always been some type of correlation when we're talking about government and church, especially in the Vatican?
well, when you get to talking about the Catholic Church, you've got 500 years plus of history where the Protestant movement was trying to get away from the papal prince being able to dictate things in their particular country or principality. And they wanted it localized. So you've got this dispute. You had the wars of religion that spread all through Europe, and they got real nasty, and a lot of people died. So maybe they worked it out. I don't know.
Hmm. Well, also today is Rome's birthday, apparently.
That's you showed me that. I went and looked it up. Nobody can say when Rome was founded. Nobody. There are some approximations, and they vary from about 500 BC all the way up to about 800 BC. So somewhere in between there. What seems to be the historical situation was they had the seven hills of Rome. They had one little village or tribe on each one of the hills. Rome started out on one of the hills. It conquered the other six, and then eventually it spread out from there with an interesting formula. They go in, jack the place up, make slaves of the individuals they conquer, and in 3 generations, the former enslaved people become citizens of Rome, and some of them who have shown promise are inducted into the Roman Senate, which the United States Senate is modeled on.
Mm-hmm.
So Rome morphs from a republic to the despotic thing run by the emperors, some of whom were very good and some were not.
Well, it says so this is an account called Roman History. Happy birthday, Rome. Rome was founded the 21st of April in 753 BC.
No, that's nobody can say what day.
Well,
Like
maybe that's when they commemorated. Okay,
that's what somebody modern day says, and that's not the majority of the scholars who deal with Rome would not use that date. Not a specific date. Nobody knows when. It has something to do with the Etruscan civilization and culture that was extant at the time, but it's got a lot to do with Greece because they absorbed each other. And for aristocratic Romans, at one point, you had to speak Greek if you wanted to be considered an educated person.
well, Well, let me pull this up. Thank you, S. Colbert says, Dana, I'm a Georgetown University descendant. Hashtag GU272. Do you think I care about the Pope passing? Honestly, I can care less about the Pope. He's not Yeshua. True, he's not Jesus, but that's interesting because Georgetown University is a Jesuit, and we all know Jesuit played a part when they talk about slavery. And that's very interesting that you're one of the descendants. Cool. Not
Jesuits go back a long way before the Europeans had any idea that the Americas existed.
I'm talking about when we did exist during they
I know,
propped
but
it
I'm
up.
just saying the Jesuit thing exists predates that by a long, long period of time.
True.
So have their thing. See, part of what the problem is you had, if you go to the Old Testament and you look at Exodus, you see ethnic cleansing, genocide, when that movement comes out of Egypt, going back to the so-called promised land. And then when the Christians become the official religion of Rome, you see the same kind of pogroms that are carried on by them. And then 5th century AD, Islam comes into being, and you see jihad, and you get the crusades, burning at the stakes, witch hunts, and all of this stuff. And religion tends to be very vicious about spreading itself because it seems like the primary core purpose of each is to get as many of the other the chance to see if their version of heaven and hell is in fact correct. And nowadays we have the same kind of thing in this country with the rainbow cult that serves as a religion, though it's more closely akin in structure to something like Buddhism, where there's no deity at all attached to it, simply a way of thinking, a philosophy of life, which tends to be, in their case, meaning the rainbow cult, essentially negative. But I mean, this kind of thing's been going on, and it's interesting. If you are an objective student of history, you'd say over the last several thousand years, going back around 3,500, maybe 4,000, you'd say the primary cause of death on the planet Earth has been somebody's expression of religion, either internally or an attempt to spread its words and conquest. So it is what it is. It's not unexpected that there's a lot of hostility around and about the practice of religion. And I will say this, and I'm not being vile about it. My favorite uncle was a preacher, and my paternal grandfather was a bishop. But I've noticed when I did my informal surveys on the bench that you very seldom, if ever, saw an atheist in the criminal court system, except when it was something like writing a bad check or something like that, or an assaultive situation where two people got to battling out something. You saw a few more agnostics, and their sphere of criminal activity expanded a little, but the most religious people were the ones that committed the worst crime. I guess forgiveness, confession, absolution, this kind of thing was too inbred with them. Although the new thing is if you believe rather than what you do, we'll
Um,
get.
Angie, all religions did not come from
No,
Catholicism.
they said that. I didn't.
No, she's saying it in the comment.
What, that all religions came from Catholicism?
Catholicism, yeah.
Oh, then you disregard the Hebrew thing, and you disregard Islam, and you disregard Hinduism, you disregard Taoism, Buddhism, you disregard Mithra,
You disregard
British
Muslim, Muslim religion.
Yeah, well, I said Islam in
Oh, you
there.
did? Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, then you disregard the whole Nordic thing with, we still have the residual from that. You can watch Marvel and see
And
Thor.
doesn't Christianity trump Catholicism because Catholicism came out of Christianity?
No, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So it's a practice, but see, it's split up. You had the Gnostics, you had the Catholics, you had the Eastern Orthodox Catholic Church. You've got all kinds of things. And
I want to turn it back to state and church because Rome, right? It's supposed to be the birthday, but Rome was not Rome because of religion. I don't even think they had a state religion, but Rome was mighty. But
Rome,
when it fell, it became popular for religion, the Pope. You get what I'm
well,
saying?
most analysts, when looking back on why Rome fell, assign three reasons. One, it became Catholic Christian. Two, it had an economic system that no longer matched 180 million people in the empire, which at that point in time was bigger than anything except the United States. By the 1960s, it was 180 some million in the US in the late 1960s. And the third one was communications. It's proven historically, when you look at it, that the Romans were playing around with steam, which could have given them steam power in an early industrial revolution 1500 years before it occurred. Otherwise, they were experimenting with electricity, and they were doing stuff with sending signals, but just inside their temples using electric static. And they needed all of these things to be together, communications and economics, but the Catholic Church squelched all of that. And they had, at that point, 5th century AD, 6th century AD, that ignorance was best because they did not want the ingenuity of man creating mischief. So if you had faith, you would trust that your anointed leaders would do the right thing for you, and they wanted you to be ignorant. So that squelched a whole lot of scientific advance that could have saved the Roman Empire. Now, the Eastern Orthodox Catholic, well, Christian church, which separated from Rome, that was in Constantinople, aka Istanbul, and that lasted for another 1,000 years. So you can see the difference in what happened. So I'm not getting on any Catholic or anything. It's just a historical observation.
Mm-hmm.
It was stultifying. So you got this Protestant Reformation somewhere in the 16th century, and a lot of chaos came out of it. You got this thing in Spain where Ferdinand and Isabella with the House of Castile and etc., they unified Al Andalus under the Christian banner, and they gave the Muslims and the Jews who had been there a choice: either convert to Catholicism or leave. Even Ferdinand, king, was known as a person whose family had started out as Islamic and he had converted, but 20 years after he came to power, along with Isabella, who died at just 36 years old, what wound up happening is a lot of the Islamic folk were drifting back to Islam. A lot of the Jews were drifting back to Judaism. And Torquemada, who was a priest, started his inquisition to find out who had drifted back. A lot of the Islamic people who had converted, the males, a lot of them were warriors. The gente, the light cavalry, that was hooked up with northern Nigeria. They became famous, and they wound up getting sent to the lowlands, Holland, Belgium, etc. And when Torquemada started his inquisitions, they kind of sort of said, oh, no, we're not going back there. We don't want to get burnt at a stake or tortured. And a lot of them had a lot of what people today call Moor in them. They did too, but not like the idealized, stylized, mythological Moor that some people think about now. And there was a high degree of African ancestry involved in this, and they took it to Ireland when Ireland, a good Catholic country, requested help. Some of the troops from the lowlands went over to Ireland to offset the English who had become Protestants. So a lot of Irish have a lot of recent African ancestry in them from back 400 years. And it gets real cute from then on, but that's just a little anecdote to hook it up with the present. But anyway, you have all these insane wars of religion. And by the end of the 1600s, which is when the parents of a lot of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence and fought in the Revolutionary War were young people, these parents spoke on the evils of the wars of religion. So the United States, when it had its Constitution propounded and ratified in 1789, and then the Bill of Rights in 1791, they made sure that there was a distinction between people's rights to practice whatever religion they wanted to, because Europe was full of these horrible extermination moments when they were fighting over who's going to believe what. And then they also did something that solved a lot of problems that the English still have, because there is an official religion of England. And that was viewed
It's
as a
the Church
very,
of England.
yes.
They separated from the Catholic Church.
Well, yeah, but there is a Church of England, which is the official religion of England, and it's Protestant, but it has a thing like rednecks. You've heard of rednecks. That has nothing to do with getting sunburned neck. That's because the Scots brought it over when they came over to settle the colonies. They wore these red scarves to indicate that they were good Presbyterians rather than the offending Episcopalians, which were part of the aristocracy in England. So you get all of these things that we still feel the effects of. So they kind of wanted to get away from this, but we are getting back to it. But this time we have this quasi religion known as the rainbow cult, LGBTQIA on steroids. And that's why it's so crazy, because it's got nothing to do with politics. It's got a great deal to do with the ruthless, anything goes by any means necessary spread of a religious belief system, except as in Buddhism, there's no deity that's attached with it. You can have no deity or you can have anyone you want. And by the way, back to Rome, any religion of any Roman citizen was deemed an official religion of Rome, so long as it did not involve human sacrifice or cannibalism. And one of the problems that Rome had historically with Christianity, you can get it in communion. What do? They eat the wafer, but they say, eat the body of Christ, and they drink the wine and say, drink the blood of Christ. And the Romans were horrified off of that because that was symbolic cannibalism. But Constantine got victory a few hundred years after that, and that became the official religion of Rome.
Yeah. Well,
Interesting.
very interesting. Well, I want to move on from the Pope.
And by the way, one other little thing too, Romulus and Remus were supposed to be twins who got abandoned, and they got suckled by a she wolf. and those are supposed to be the two founders of Rome. A little thing that's kind of off point, but it's quite fascinating. The people that have been working on cloning mammoths and bringing back the dodos have remanufactured the gray wolf DNA setup and used some of the DNA from, let's see, I think it was one dire wolf fossil from 76,000 years ago and another one from 13,000 years ago to manufacture what appears to be what's known as a dire wolf. So the first two are male and they are identical twins, and one of them is known as Romulus and the other one known as Remus in honor of the two Romans. So they are still puppies. They're not a year old yet. And they have a sister who's named after one of the characters in Game of Thrones. And you will recall that two dire wolves were pets of some of the
Oh,
primaries.
it's actually 5 or
With,
6. It was 6 dire wolves for
yeah,
the
you had them as
Sharpe.
characters. So in other words, they kind of recreated them. They're bigger than
That was
great.
recently, yeah.
Yeah, that was this year, and it was just a thing.
Okay.
But anyway, they are fascinating. They're all white, by the way.
Right. All right. Well, I want to move on to Carmelo Anthony. Yeah. And I want to talk about it from a different spin. It's still trending. I don't know if I think you've heard that this past weekend, this January 6th called Jake Lang. Yeah, because he popped up in the space last week, Thursday, trying to promote it. Protect White Americans rally in honor of Austin McCaff. And so no one showed up. So I said, shout out to all the white people that did not fall for the okie doke. So nobody didn't show up. It was a failed rally, and he had the audacity to call Austin McCaff father to say, "Oh, we're here supporting your son." And the father was like, basically, F off. I'm not associated with you. I don't want to be associated with you. Leave me alone and keep my son name and pictures out your mouth and off your website. So he did not want to associate with that man. So no new evidence has not come out. The only thing that has come out was the police report. And a lot of people on social media, whether it's YouTube or X, they are doing a lot of assumptions. Oh, it was self defense because of this. It was self defense because of that. You don't know. And
Well, here, let me say
well,
something.
this is the question. Let me say this. Let me set it up. So this is the police report. In the police report, it just records the officers when they got on the scene and arresting Carmelo. Let me finish. And they had only a list of names of all of the teenagers that possibly witnessed it, and they took their cell phones. None of their statements is in the police report. So the question I have for you is, what is it that we don't know about the Carmelo Anthony case? So you want to say what you want to say, but the question I'm asking you is, we don't have the evidence. But what we do have, what is it that we don't know as of
Well, the
now?
question is not really the right question. Let's
It was
assume,
the right question in my head
well,
when I
I
wrote
know,
it down.
but let me illustrate what I'm talking about very quickly. What the real situation is the defendant himself claimed that he was exercising self-defense. Let's assume that everything he claims is true. The problem is under the laws that exist now, unless a jury engages in jury nullification, if everything he says is true, the question becomes a legal one, a technical one. Under all of those circumstances, was he entitled to engage in self-defense by use of deadly force? So, in other words, let's assume everything he says is valid. Everything he claims gets backed up by the witnesses and evidence. The issue boils down to, would that enable him to have a reasonable belief that he was going to die or was going to suffer life-threatening injuries, because in layman's terms, that's the only thing that justifies the use of deadly force. He claims, well, people are claiming on his behalf that these were two size large white guys and they were going to whip him. Just because you get your behind kicked, that's not legally sufficient to justify the use of lethal or deadly force unless you're likely to be killed in the process. Not possible, not remote, but likely. In other words, likely is determined by what the reasonable man would do. The reasonable man is 12 people on a jury. That's what reasonable man means under American law. The jury is a single entity. The reasonable person is the 12-person jury. And if they think it was reasonable, fine. If they don't, you got a murder case, homicide case, manslaughter, negligent or reckless homicide, depending upon where you are and what state you're in. So it's something that I've seen a lot, both on the bench as a judge, both as a criminal defense lawyer, and growing up in South Central Los Angeles, which wasn't even called that when I was growing up. And too often, what happens is scared people get away with killing too many other people because they claim they were fearful, or they actually were, and they acted with deadly force in a situation that did not merit that, where the deadly force was a great escalation. And one of the things that's bad is our culture right now in the inner city, in some portions of the various barrios, does not deal with what the Spartan mothers used to teach their sons. Son, come back with your shield or on it. In other words, you are a warrior. You honor your family by acting as a warrior with the ethos of a warrior. Our boys are being raised to be scared. They are raised to be emotional. They are raised to think that they can go take somebody's life because they are offended, or they may get bruised and battered. Bruised and battered is not sufficient, because we have boxing matches, we have wrestling matches, we have full contact martial arts, we have football, we have rugby, we have all of these sports where people get routinely battered, bruised, and bloodied, just as bad, much worse generally than what would happen in your typical old time fist fight. So when somebody is going out there and spending all of their time watching sports on television, watching the prize fights, watching the cage fights, watching the wrestling matches, though they tend to be a bit fake, and watching all of the other full contact sports, it seems incongruous for somebody to say, I was afraid of getting done less badly physically in these athletes that I glorify in a fist fight, so I became terrified and I shot this guy or I stabbed this guy. Now, the thing is going out, he didn't intend to kill him, but he used deadly force. So this resolves not whether somebody intended to kill, but whether somebody intended to use a deadly instrument. And the statutes, the common law, do not differentiate between one deadly instrument and another. For example, I said this the last time on the X space, but some people didn't get it. Stabbing somebody in the chest with a knife, did you intentionally stab them? That's all that goes into the equation, not whether you intended to kill. Why? Because the issue is deadly force, the use thereof. And let us take the same thing with deadly force carried to another different thing degree, but it's still the same. let's say you pull out a 1911 45 auto and shoot the guy right in the chest. Bam! All right, you shot him with a 45 in the chest. You use deadly force. You take a knife and you stab him in the chest. You use deadly force. Does anybody sit there and ask the question, well, did he intend to kill him when he shot him dead center in the chest with a 45 auto and hit him where he was aiming? It doesn't make any difference. You pull the trigger and you intend the possible consequences of pulling the trigger. It's the same with the knife. You stab somebody, you are presumed to intend the consequences of the stab. And the question comes in, were you entitled under the situation to defend yourself by use of deadly force? And all of this other stuff about the circumstances around and about it, that becomes the burden of the person who is to us. That becomes a burden that must be established by the person that's claiming this affirmative defense to a crime. If you kill somebody, it's a crime. But under certain circumstances, it may be justifiable, and it becomes justifiable homicide. The crime of the homicide becomes excused and justified if you had a right to self-defense. So the right of self-defense has all kinds of considerations like escalation in the degree of force. Somebody's punching you and you come up with a knife or a baseball bat or an axe, you're pretty much, if you are a grown, healthy male, you're pretty much out of it. And then the guy that says, well, the assailants were bigger than him, or assuming there were two, even if they were, well, what that means is anytime one of the parties to a fist fight is bigger than the other one, if the little guy is losing, that line of logic would say he could pull out a gun and shoot the guy if he's losing, or he could stab him in the chest if he's losing. And there'd be a whole lot of dead folk if that was the case. So what usually happens is you have a right to stand your ground. Damn near every state in the union had stand your ground as part of its law until a very few, just a handful in New England and a couple of other places decided to say you had to try to run. And if you couldn't run away, then you could use self-defense. But in
Yeah, New
this case,
Jersey.
when you are in a fist fight and you're losing, get on up, leave, stop. That's your option. But in
So,
this case, somebody stabbed somebody in the chest, and we have this question of whether that was justified under the circumstances. And all of the woke folks say it is. Now, for purposes of this discussion, and I'll leave it at that, what I am hearing from these woke folk, what I heard on that X space we conducted last week, is exactly what you get from the DEI logic, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the CRT critical race theory, which is you set somebody up as a chronic victim, impose in their mind the victim's mentality, so everybody's dumping on them. And that's supposed to justify some kind of retaliatory attitude where you take any excuse and you go kill one of them. And that's just the wrong way to think about stuff.
mhm. Well, so basically, you kind of did answer the question, what we don't know about the Carmela Anthony, because the police report is just a timeline of what the police did when they arrived and, the suspect or whatever. It's like a timeline of events, but not exactly what happened. But there is a paragraph here that says, um, the victim, Austin, and the suspect, who was later identified as Carmela Anthony, was from Centennial High School and was sitting under the Memorial High School tent. Austin had told Anthony that he needed to move out from under their team's tent, and Anthony grabbed his bag, opened it, and reached inside and proceeded to tell Austin touch me and see what happens. No one really thought Anthony really had any weapons in his bag. And Austin proceeded to touch Anthony. And then Anthony told Austin to punch him and see what happens. A short time later, Austin grabbed Anthony to tell him to move. And Anthony pulled out what, and they blurred out the person name, recalled as a black knife and stabbed Austin once in the chest and then ran away. Austin began grabbing his chest and telling everyone to get help. Such and such advised he did not know Anthony's name, but stated another Memorial Track member, such and such, was friends with Anthony and he could identify Anthony. Such and such described Anthony as a black male, skinny, with possible a something, short, puffy hair, wearing Centennial High School clothing. This concluded my contact with such and such. So this was one of the people who they, asked, I guess, what happened. And upon my arrival, they're filling out their reports and stuff like that. And they have a list of people names and said they took their cell phones. Yeah, like here. And
But let me say this, as I said, enough's in the record to evoke the defendant's claim of, well, to, and his lawyer says this, that the defendant was engaging in self-defense. That makes everything else kind of go by the wayside, except for whether or not it either sustains or defeats the necessity of him showing that he had a reasonable belief that he was about to die or suffer life-threatening injuries if he did not use deadly force. That's what it amounts to. Was he about to die, or was he about to suffer life-threatening injuries? Now, all of the rest of it doesn't make any difference because the jury's going to have to find that that was the case. Otherwise, his use of deadly force was not justified, even if he otherwise had a right to self-defense, which he did. So the question becomes even more complicated in one sense. Like, did he even get hit a blow? If he got just hands put on him, that's one thing. That's certainly somebody grabs you, unless there's something else like the person telling you, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to do this to you. I'm going to hurt you badly. And under the circumstances, you perhaps have some familiarity with the assailant's history, and that might be taken in the context of, I'm going to die if I don't use deadly force, or I might be hurt so bad that I'll almost be dead, or I could be in jeopardy of, being sent to the hospital and being in critical care. Now, that's even from what the defendant's lawyer has been contending. I don't see that, but he's presumed innocent until proven guilty. My concern, since to me, this is a completely routine case, and as far as homicides go, it's like shoplifting to theft. You get a whole lot of shoplifting cases in the criminal justice system. You get a whole lot of these fright-driven, fear-driven homicides. And I don't like the idea, because forget the fact that you had somebody who is white and died. Let's just say the problem is 19 out of every 20 times something comes up like this, the surviving person claiming self-defense and the dead person are all of the same ethnic group. And this is what drives so many homicides in our community. That is fear. Nobody can engage in duke it out man on man because some clown is likely to go kill you because he's about to piss his pants, scared.
So let me
So
read this. Let me read
what?
this super chat real
Yeah,
quick.
see, I mean, it's bad, and a lot of people don't get it, and I know folk don't like me saying this, but I don't care. It's just,
Let
you
me
know,
read this. Let me read this. It
yeah,
says, if thank you, amazing disgrace. He says, if that's grounds for self-defense, everyone else will have to live with at that as the standard for self-defense through president.
yeah, it is. It's the universal standard. It's been that way for quite a long time. Not long after Robin Hood's day, which is in 1160s and 1180s. So that's almost
The
1,000
question is,
years.
here's the thing, is this one statement in a police report of someone trying to recount um what happened, but other than that there's no new evidence, no motive, there's no new evidence. You only have the police report, right, and a lot of public speculation. So what is it that
It doesn't make any difference.
no, the question I'm saying, what is it that we don't know because we're
It
not
doesn't
going
make
to
any
know?
difference.
We're not. I'm talking about legally.
I
Like,
mean, legally, it doesn't make any difference. The thing is firmed up. The defense, his lawyer, the defendant himself, is that he engaged in self defense. The only issue that comes up is, was the use of deadly force justified? And in order to justify it, you have to show that the defendant was likely to have been killed or suffered life threatening injuries.
no, this is the question I'm asking you. When it comes to, a lot of people are assuming this and assuming that. So when I say, what is it that we don't know? You, as a legal expert, would say you don't know if such and such happened, or we don't know if, like, there aren't there like these legal
No, this one is a slam dunk. Either he was in jeopardy of dying or getting life threatening injuries, or he was not. And
okay,
everything else
doesn't matter.
doesn't matter.
Just those,
That's the
that
issue.
okay. Okay.
He had a right to self defense. The problem was, did that right of self defense extend to using deadly force,
All
which
this
is
about race, and apparently
all of that's
Austin black friends saying he's not a racist, and
is
all this
irrelevant.
else. Okay.
Totally irrelevant.
Hmm.
See, it's an affirmative defense. Ordinarily, when you have a defense, it's I didn't do it, or what happened is not what you claiming happened. But in this case, the defendant is saying, I admit I did it. I administered the fatal wound, but I am claiming a matter of right. So that matter of right only lays if he was likely to have been killed or suffered death or life threatening injuries if he had not. So those are the only issue. That's the only issue that is going to be out there. All of the evidence goes to establishing that. He's already admitted. His lawyer reconfirmed that he did it. He stabbed the man in the chest, but he claims justification. So all of the rest of that, you know,
So the only two things here, say that again for everybody in the room.
the only things that count, well, okay, one, he had a right to self defense, no question. But as to using deadly force, he has to show that he had a reasonable belief that he was going to die or suffer life threatening injuries if he had not used deadly force against the deceased. That's it.
Okay. Now, one more thing about the Carmelo Anthony case. Now, the Fresco police is investigating after the families, the McCaffs and the Anthony families, are being harassed with swatting calls. So it says the families of Austin McCaff and Carmelo Anthony are facing unrelenting harassment that's putting their safety and the safety of their neighbors at risk. Um, Twice, 17-year-old high school student Austin McCaff. What? Twice since, okay. Oh my God, I can't journalism, horrible writing. Twice since the 17-year-old high school student Austin McCaff was killed, Fresco police officers have been sent to his mother's and father's home because of prank 911 calls. He would not go on camera, but Austin's father, Jeff McCaff, told CBS News Texas that he's worried someone will get injured or killed by what's happening in his neighborhood. Images and video show what happened outside of Jeff McCaff's home in Fresco on Thursday. SWAT officers with guns drawn responded to a 911 that no one inside had made.
What happens is, look, what this swatting is about is some punk calls up and says, I'm at this address, somebody's trying to kill me, they're armed people, so police show up ready to go and deal heavily because they think there are armed parties on the scene. Or somebody calls up and says, people in the house, they're armed and they're threatening folk with a gun and they're saying they're going to shoot somebody. So SWAT team shows up ready to go. And if somebody makes the slightest wrong movement, it's likely to all go south and somebody's dying or there's some shots fired and it's a mess. See, that's a punk play. That's another punk play. Now,
of the people doing these prank calls?
prank calls. That is straight up punk.
Yeah, like
You
leave
doing
the
that, your manhood is questionable.
So it
You're
says,
punk.
So, as we all know, last week, Thursday, the mother of Carmela Anthony revealed that her husband had to take a leave from his job because of harassment targeting his employer. And also, Jeff McCaff, he had to leave his job as well. So, everyone involved, it says everyone involved in investigation from the police to attorneys and the courts to our address and my husband's previous employee's address has been put on all social media platforms. So this thing it's getting out of hand.
It's a damn shame because the reality is this is one of the most common kind of cases in the criminal justice system.
Mhm.
White folks shoot black folks shoot white folk or stab white folk, or white folks stab black folk. Hispanic folks still stab or shoot black folk and vice versa, and it goes on at great length. So I fault the mainstream media for hyping this stuff because it dovetails in with some politics right now. And it is absolutely crazy. It is to the benefit of the Democratic Party to get the black community riled up. And it's to the benefit of some other people who have another agenda to push what has been put in place so that there is racial animosity that develops for no reason at all, other than that mainstream media, the Democratic Party, and some right-wing cranks can take advantage of it. It'll get somebody killed, and it is not going to do one damn thing to cure the underlying problem, which is the perception on one side that they are perpetual victims and that they're looking for some way to get vengeance the wrong kind of way, instead of just saying, hey, be strong and get your stuff together. It also has a socio pathology aspect, which is the acculturation and socialization of youth does not flow, because when punks go stab somebody using deadly force in what is a fist fight, stand and get the butt beat, show you have something and beat butt, or run, or say, hey, that's enough, and shake hands. When you don't do that, you get this, oh my God, we need to protect the children from bullying.
So
So
let me throw this on
grow
the
up with lack of manhood.
let me throw this on the table because Kason Allison, he's in the middle of a trial and he stabbed another student 5 times in the boys' bathroom in the high school because he felt he was like, he felt like he was going to get jumped, and he didn't, and the students taking a stand saying, well, he didn't want to fight. So apparently he didn't get jumped by 5 guys, even though I guess 5 guys came into the bathroom. It was just one guy, but he pulled out a knife and stabbed the one guy 5 times and he died. So he's on trial now.
Same kind of thing.
Same thing.
Same thing. And that's the white guy on trial.
Yeah.
And like I'm saying, there's probably a couple of thousand of these cases pending right now in the United States of America. But it is just absolutely disgusting that this piss poor crew of journalists, and I use the term loosely,
Mm-hmm.
have decided to highlight this for ratings.
Yeah. I mean, listen, do I get ratings talking about this? Yeah, but I really want to be objective and not sensationalism. And I've said that this is not about race. It's not. What it is about is teens gone wild, teens that don't understand consequences, teens that think they're entitled. They don't understand conflict resolution. Is we have this is a national problem because it was another guy and he had a court hearing, I believe was earlier today, and I forgot his name. Black guy went to his school and shot 5 people. So might as well say a mass shooter, because he felt as though, well, I had to get them before they got me, and apparently it was over a dice game. But these are all teenagers, and it just so happened that was an all black school. So I don't care. It's something going on with the youth, and all the adults in the room are failing the kids. So yeah.
They're getting taught to be emotional. 57 years ago, I heard it all the time on UCLA's campus. Men need to learn to express themselves. They need to be able to emote, to cry, to shout, to let it all hang out, and be like the women, man, so they can be emotional. It's okay to be emotional. So everybody wanted to convert the boys to being raised as emotional creatures like they were girls. And it does not work when you take the apex predator on the planet Earth, the most dangerous thing that has ever walked the continents, and you tell him it's all right to give in to his emotions. That's crazy. Even the Vikings drew a line. You've heard of Leif Erikson and Eric the Red. They settled Iceland. They discovered Iceland and Greenland. And looks like one of them, Eric the Red, or excuse me, Leif Erikson, he got to the North America 400 years before Christopher Columbus. But you know why they called
I want to move on.
no, but I mean, I'm just talking about all cultures. Eric the Red was looked at, get this, by the Vikings as a dangerous homicidal maniac. And they banned him from Scandinavia, said, you gotta go. You are too dangerous.
What does that have to do with?
In other words, it's an emotional thing. He was known as a berserker, and his son, Leif Erikson, was known as a violent person who was so violent that he even scared his own father with his propensity for violence. And the father had been banned from Scandinavia from being too
Okay, let's,
violent.
let's swing it
So,
back.
in other words, societies have the thing where they say enough is enough. You know,
Thank you.
this has gotten out of hand. So
I want to read the super chat here.
yeah,
Thank you, Freedmen's Network. He said, so if that's the case, Judge, why did Daniel Penny walk scot free?
Daniel Penny, you're talking about in New York,
Mm-hmm.
because they had some whacked out crazy fool that was a threat, actual threat, who had a long, long rap sheet of physical violence against innocent people. And he was acting out. He was mentally ill. And this person, Penny, acted like a man. He protected the people in the car that he was in, the subway unit, and he applied a chokehold. He held it too long, and the guy passed away from oxygen privation when you compress the carotid arteries and you can't get full
Nobody,
flow.
he didn't have to press that.
Because under the circumstances, the jury in question said it was reasonable. See, it's defense of third parties as well as self-defense. They're the same. In other words, you can defend yourself, self-defense, or you can defend third parties. So under the circumstances, the jury said this character that he used non-weapon, non-deadly force on unfortunately died, but under the circumstances, it was justified. And if you don't get the difference, then you need to go back and do some personal reassessment. There is this thing about people, individual citizens in our country have a obligation to contribute to public peace, dignity, and order. And when somebody's out of line, it's the obligation of the observing citizens to keep things in line. I know everybody says, I want to take my cell phone and video this so I can get on TikTok and get some likes, but that's not the way it goes. You're supposed to contribute to the public peace, dignity, and order. And what Penny did, he didn't stab him. He didn't hit him with a club. He didn't shoot him. He choked him out.
Well, he tried to
Subdue him.
subdue him, but he subdued them to death.
Well, that was well.
I just think that I
I've
just think it
tried.
was excessive.
I've defended cases like that. And what the general thing is, and all of my clients I defended with those, they got acquitted. And the deal is that you say he applied he did not use a deadly weapon. He used his hands, arms, legs, or feet, or whatever. And under the circumstances, his response to the circumstance, well, his response to what the deceased was doing was reasonable. This person was indicating that he was crazy. And see, when somebody's acting crazy, because it's supposed to be a common experience, unlike most other stuff, but quite like when somebody says he looked drunk to me. People, humans, have such an experience with either being drunk or observing a drunk that they're fully qualified to state an opinion. So Penny says he looked like he was going to attack somebody, and other people said he looked like he was going to attack somebody. He was threatening people, so Penny restrained him.
No, I
And
don't have a problem. Yeah, you know what? I don't have a problem with that. And Joseph Camp in the chat says, Dana, would you want him to defend you if you were in danger? Yeah, you can defend me. Yes, I will want that. Only thing I'm saying is, for so long, people in New York subways, yes, we were used to the crazies. But apparently somebody told me when I held the X space last night, and she lives in New York, grew up in New York. She said it was a week prior to that incident with Daniel Penny. Someone came on a train, and a mentally challenged person came on a train and was yelling, "Oh, I'm gonna kill you," and just threatening people, being erratic, right? And people thought, okay, it's another nut job on the train. But this person actually had a weapon. I don't know if it was a gun or a knife, right? So that person, I think they were able to, I guess, subdue them, or the cops came or whatever. So when this incident, no, I heard that they actually shot people in the train, and either it was a week or maybe a month, but it was recent. So they actually harms people on the train. So let's just say, and then a week later, the Daniel Penny incident with Jordan Neely, I guess Daniel Penny was like, I'm not trying to get caught up with another crazy person that actually has a weapon, is going to use it. So let me subdue him. And so I think the question was, did he intentionally try to kill him? Maybe not. Apparently he said no, but I'm just saying, yes, I want you to defend me. But he was a trained Marine, and I'm just like, well, damn, didn't you know how to subdue him without?
no, they don't necessarily know how to do that.
But yeah, but yeah,
Because
mhm.
it's like you can train somebody. Let me tell you how I've taken martial arts for 60 years. When there's a miscarriage or trying to choke hold, what happens is this: you're instructed to either out loud or to yourself count to 15. 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. And what happens is when you get to 15, release your hold, because then you start doing brain damage. If you cut it off completely, I can do it on somebody with thumb and forefinger if you get it on the carotid. And in 10 seconds, you're going to lose your vision. And in 15, you'll faint. If I hold it on longer than that, I start risking you suffering brain damage. So what happens is, in the heat of the moment, Marine or otherwise, what goes on is people start forgetting to count and say, oh, well, and then they let go, and then the person starts reviving and starts struggling again. See, what the purpose of this, from what he presented, meaning Penny at the trial, was he was attempting to subdue this guy to keep him from doing harm to other people. Now, in the self defense situation, it can be escalated even if the guy does not have a weapon
Mhm.
and you think he does, because a lot of states, well, not all places, but some states like Tennessee says you still have the self defense even if you are mistaken about the circumstances, so long as it's an honest mistake. But this kid did not say, I thought he had a deadly weapon. He did not say, I thought he had a knife too. He did not say, I thought he had a gun. He said, I defended myself, and he stabbed him. See, that's why you need to remember you have a Fifth Amendment right to be free from self incrimination. Keep your mouth shut. And he didn't go too far. But you see, under the circumstances, their thing was they're trying to deal with justification. If the guy was found to have a knife on him, a gun on him, okay, fine, he's on square one. If he says, I thought he had a knife, or what he was acting like was that he was armed, or what he was acting like was this, and I think my response was reasonable to the circumstance, fine. But it's still best to shut your mouth and let the police try to build their case. And you got charged. And sometimes there's no way to talk your way out of the whole thing. You wait till trial and let your lawyer craft the defense of self defense and then go ahead without putting yourself in a real live mess.
Well, just real quick, I want to say this about the Daniel Penny, because two people I know that are in a law enforcement industry, right, especially security. They said that Daniel Penny, they agree with the actions of Daniel Penny because, um, you know, listen, Marine, that is your job to defend, but they were like, being in security, and if you say something, that is cause for someone to step in self-defense.
Yeah, it is.
So it's so he was like, and so he was, and then he was like, what I do for a living, even if somebody say I'm going to do it, whether they do it or not, I have the right to step in and I'm going to subdue that person. And you don't, and he just said, you don't do it with
He
kid
doesn't have the right, he has the justification. That's the
justification,
difference.
right? Well, this person, he's actually law enforcement, but even if he wasn't, but what he was basically saying, the whole premise of self defense and security and in securing the premises or defending other people, when somebody even verbally says this, they're going to do something, then you are, like you said, justified to defend.
Let me explain something else too. This is very important. The cop has exactly the same rights of self defense that a citizen does. A citizen has exactly the same rights of self defense as the cop. But what happens is there is this other part of this, the same aspects applied to defending a third party. And the police have a bigger burden when it comes to defending third parties. In other words, it's not just what happens right there when a person has given the indication that he or she is going to be extremely violent or pose a threat to somebody's life. It's what happens if they leave with that same state of mind, with that same possible armed situation. That cop has an obligation to protect remote third parties outside of those that are just standing right there in front of everybody.
Okay.
You get the difference?
No, I do. All right, so let's move on to the main event. Yes, I know you don't do pop culture, but this is legal. This is legal. This is not gossip and tea. So I don't know if you ever heard of Shannon Sharpe, but he has a very popular podcast called Club Shay Shay, and he's the one that interviewed Cat Williams last year that went like viral, right? Over 50 million views. Now, He is right now being sued for $50 million over alleged R allegations. Um,
By the way, you notice mainstream media, YouTube, Facebook, they can talk about a homicide like we just got through, but that R thing, they'll sit there, demonetize you, and penalize you for saying that.
yeah. The lawsuit obtained by
Somebody's all right, but not Ring somebody.
The lawsuit obtained by TMZ Sports was filed by Jane Doe on Sunday in Nevada after she says Sharp brutally sexually assaulted her several times at the end of 2024 and the beginning of 2025 following a years long abusive relationship. According to the suit, Doe met Sharp in 2023 at a gym in Los Angeles when she was 20 years old and he was in his mid 50s. And I said this earlier in my monologue the difference between men and women aging. But anyway, she stated in the docs during her first encounter, Sharp told her he would buy her fake titties if she won a weight loss competition for him. She wrote in the suit, Sharp proceeded to pursue her relentlessly, calling, texting, and demanding she come to his Beverly Glen mansion. The woman stated she and the former Denver Broncos tight end ultimately got into a consensual relationship, though she described it as a controlling and verbally abusive. He demanded complete control over her time and body. She is being represented by attorney Tony Busby. This is the same man that had got that hotline to have all these people call who said that they were assaulted by Diddy, and he had the Jane Doe that tried to come after Jay-Z, and which was later found out to be false claims. So this is her attorney. And so
Oh,
Tony,
yeah, or Gloria Aldred. I thought it would be one or the other.
right. So Tony Busby wrote in Dole's suit expecting her to be at his house on schedule at his command whenever he called. Dole claimed there was one argument in particular that terrified her when he yelled at her while a firearm was visible in the room. Plaintiff tried sharing her location with friends from her iPhone just in case, but Sharp saw her doing this. The moment he realized what she was doing, he grabbed her by the neck and told her, if you ever do that again, I will effing kill you. The two, nevertheless, continued the relationship, even following a move by both to Nevada during the summer of 2024. However, Doe states in her suit she attempted to break things off after his infamous Instagram live streaming incident, which she said led to him R-ing her. Dole claimed in her suit the first instance happened October 2024 at her apartment. She said 53-year-old Pro Football Hall of Famer forced himself on her while she was crying and sobbing. The second instance the suit alleges happened a few weeks later in January of 2025. Dole claims Sharp came over to her house with promises of delivering a Christmas and birthday gift to her, but instead violently sexually assaulted her once more. She's suing for over $50 million. Quote, it takes a great deal of courage to stand up against those with power, fame, and money, Busby said in a statement. I look forward to pressing this case in court. We have reached out to Sharp for comment in this case, but so far no word yet.
He needs to keep his mouth shut. Now,
And he did, and he is letting his lawyer do all the talking because his lawyer released a statement. Give me a sec.
I mean, this went on for more than a year, so she kept coming back over there.
Yeah.
She like, what do the other side call it? What do they call it? Rough trade or something?
Yes, because let me read. So the lawyer had dropped text receipts and said, so statement by Lanny J. Davis, counsel to Shannon Sharpe. I want you to put a dog collar around my neck and choke me with it while you're effing me. Gabriella Zuniga in a text message to Shannon Sharpe on my damn birthday on October 2023. I,
She
shut up. I know you missed this big juicy ass, 25K for each cheek. Again, text from Gabriella to Shannon Sharpe. This lawsuit filed by Gabriella Zuninga and orchestrated by her attorney, Tony Busby, is a blatant and cynical attempt to shake down Mr. Sharpe for millions of dollars. It is filled with lies, distortion, and misrepresentation, and it will not succeed. In her effort to extract a large financial statement, Ms. Zuniga, hmm?
large financial settlement.
Right. Miss Zuniga presented Mr. Sharpe with a secretly recorded video of consensual sexual encounter. We believe the video has been heavily edited and taken entirely out of context, crafted to falsely portray a consensual act as non-consensual. Miss Zuniga has refused to provide a copy of the full unedited version of the recording to Mr. Sharpe's legal team. To set the record straight, we are releasing several of Ms. Zulinga's own explicit text messages to Mr. Sharpe that clearly indicate the nature of their relationship was consensual and sexual in nature, and in many cases, initiated by her with specific and graphic requests. Contrary to the allegations she made in her lawsuit, consensual sex continued until January 2nd, 2025, the day after she asked for $25,000 per cheek as quoted above from her text message to Mr. Sharpe. There are other examples of text messages. She says here, quote, only if you put that baby gravy in me, then I can do whatever then I can do whatever I want to me. And then I want to put my tongue in your asshole and then marry you. That's
Okay, now see what goes on is, let's see, from one of the people that is notorious for filing these cases, this person was a little bit tipsy, a lot tipsy at an Emmy Award party. And this person was telling me that they filed these lawsuits to extort settlements, which got lucrative. So I'm not saying that counsel for the plaintiff has no case at all, but let's just say that perhaps this is another one of those things because lawyers, some of them are one way and some of them are another, and I won't get into it and go liability.
So here's a question, because I do want to read the rest of these texts too, but here's a question I want to ask you. Should he give her a settlement to just make it go away?
No, I think what should be happening is he might want to take a stand and clear his name, because with that kind of thing, the jury's got to sit there and go. And remember, the jury is not going to be your typical hip hop type because they have criminal records, so they're going to be excused for cause. They don't want to be on the jury, so they will get themselves excused. They don't have homes that they're buying, so they might not be on the jury commissioner's rolls. They might have all kinds of other stuff, and they probably won't wind up on a jury. So what's going to happen is you'll get some stoic, solid, middle class people who are going to, oh my God, she wanted what?
Well, let me
What she's in writing? Oh
let
my
me
God.
let me read the rest of the text. Now, this is the tea part. That's my daddy fuck. That's my daddy fuck. I want you to put a big black baby in me. You better carve it because you're going to be stuck with it for life after you put a big black baby in me. It says these messages are samples of a broader pattern of graphic sexual communications initiated by Zuniga. The evidence paints a clear picture that it was consensual. The edited tape, blah, 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 blah. So Shannon Sharpe denies it. I did have more text messages. Oh yeah, it was over here.
That there's an easy way to prove that these text messages come from somebody. But what is the old proverb? Quote, be careful what you ask for, comma, you just might get it, unquote. So if she actually sent those, and see, this is a civil case where the standard of proof is not beyond a reasonable doubt, just more likely than not. If the defense comes up with those and you get him on the stand and testify, or you show this through the phone company that these are in fact the records, you got a problem. Other thing too is the way the law is right now on text. Not every service will provide you with encrypted text protection, but let's just take one that has the strongest. Let's say the iPhone, all right, and AT&T. If you send a text to somebody and you erase it within 48 hours, it's gone, and the only people that have it are the sender and the receiver. If you don't erase the text within 48 hours, the phone company has to keep a verbatim record of it for at least 60 days. And in the systems they have now, it's pretty much kept there. Now, what happens is when you get into these things like this, what you're doing is rebuttal to a contention of the plaintiff in this case, and generally in most places a screenshot where the thing self authenticates. You have the phone number it comes from, you have the message it's responsive to, you have what's said, and you can screenshot it and you can stick it under your nose, somebody's nose. Is this or is this not your phone number? Do you or do you not recall on such and such day sending a text to him?
Oh God.
And what happens is that,
Can you hear me?
oh, hell.
Give him a second. Somebody must have called him. Because, honey, I want to read the rest of these texts to y'all. No, I never
Are
got
you
into the
there?
Zane book. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, see. And then you say, do you or do you not recall sending this? All right, no, this is cross examination. You can lead. Isn't it a fact that on such and such dates you sent this text to my client, the defendant? And you can say, I let me read it to you. Well, perhaps your recollection fails. Your Honor, if I might send up a copy of what we have authenticated as a screenshot of a text message she sent. See, you can even try to authenticate it through her. And if she says, no, I didn't send it, then you can put him up or somebody from the phone company and you can get it in anyway. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a shakedown. This is extortion. This is blackmail. This person ought to be in jail. She asked for this. She got exactly what she wanted. And now at this late date, was she trying to set my client up to extort him for this money? Look at this. She asked for it. This is graphic. There is no question about this. And then see, where do you go with it?
Well, okay, so let me read the rest of the text message, right?
Okay. There's more. Wow. I mean, my ears are burning.
It says, so, okay, so on March 5th, 2023, Doe allegedly texted Sharp a picture of a woman tied up in a compromising position and said, "Tie me up like this and fuck me." To which he replied, "If I knew how to, I would." She allegedly wrote back, "It's okay. I have handcuffs." we can stick to those for now. I want to be in the position, I want to be in that position right now. And then she goes on to say, when Sharp told her it was too, and then he L8 now, too late. Okay, too late now. God. I guess I'm not going to have to F myself in the ass with my dildo then. So she said, I guess I'm going to have to F myself in the ass with my dildo.
By the way, you know where this sex is a familiar chord for?
What?
Anybody seen Wonder Woman with Gal Gadot? She's a very pretty woman. She's a good actress. Anybody seen Wonder Woman?
Yeah. What Wonder Woman got to do with this?
A whole lot. The guy that created Wonder Woman way back in the 1940s was also the person that invented the polygraph test with the polygraph machine. And he was straight up into sadomasochism. So his wife and he had a girlfriend that lived with them for a long time. So he kind of modeled Wonder Woman on her. And then you see she has the lasso of truth, the ring of pain. And if you read some of the old cartoons, comic books, it's interesting. They'll have Wonder Woman capturing somebody and putting them in a room, and then they'll have a black frame, but with the bubbles with the words in it, and it'll be something like, "What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? No, no!" And then, and then, oh God, it hurts so good, it hurts so good. Don't stop, So he advocated sadomasochism.
Uh,
That's the guy that invented, and
Wonder
he used to talk like this. He'd publish it. He'd say his fantasies is called sadomasochism. In other words, the dominatrix, she tied up him and his wife and would beat them with straps until they bled and put apples in their mouth and handcuff them and do all of this weird stuff to them.
Okay, can I finish reading these texts?
So anyway, this is nothing unusual. I mean,
All right,
this
so let me
is
just finish.
Hollywood.
So let me just finish. True, and he met her in Hollywood. So it says in March of 2023, she allegedly sent him, "I want to be abused, daddy." Another text, "I'm getting your name tattooed on me in like an hour, by the way. Just thought I'll let you know." Sharp text back, in the font of my cognac, to which she allegedly responded, "Yes, daddy, on my neck. If I get it, can I maybe be your baby mama?" Fast forward, Doe allegedly messaged former tight end, "Call me. I feel like effing." I read that one. 2 days later, "I want you to put a dog collar around my neck and choke me with it while you're effing me." Another one, she says, "Only if you put that baby gravy in me." Okay, yeah, 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 the black baby. I said that. And then Sharp replied, "If I s- I still F with you around." Okay, he says, "If I still fuck with you around my birthday in 2024, you can take the IUD out." So apparently he was hitting it raw, but she was on birth control. And he's telling her, if we still together on my birthday in 2024, then you could take the IUD out and get pregnant.
Well, how many people are talking about now? That's the feminist thing. You don't need to get married. Marriage is a form of slavery. Just have your baby. And it seems
But
like
it's about who got
82.
money.
It seems like 80, according to the Department of Defense, 14 years ago, in a white paper, a series of them, they said uh, at that time, 2011, almost 80+% of the American public 20 and under was born out of wedlock. So
Right.
what the devil? It looks like that's the way to go. And, again, be careful what you ask for. You just might get it.
So it says, "I want to put my tongue in your asshole and then marry you." And then she says, "That just got my pee wet, pussy wet. Tie me up and do bad things to me." To which Sharp responded, "Cuff up."
Well, look, they wouldn't have the terms rough trade sadomasochism, S&M, and all kinds of stand-ins for that if some people didn't ask for it. There's a whole porn category of S&M where they graphically play this out on the screen. So this is not uh, unpopular with certain quarters. So, hey.
I'll let you make it hang whenever you want, daddy, but only if you take me out and treat me good. To which he sent back, deal. I carve your pussy. That's my pee now. Oh my God. Um, and then she went on to say, okay, so Doe claimed her attempt to break up with him led to him arguing her. She alleged in a lawsuit the first time he did it was in October, and she was crying. And she says, when I'm 152 pounds, but you can't touch me because you cheated on me on Instagram Live with such and such, going to be 180 soon, and you're still not going to be able to touch. Bet you're regretting your actions right about now. So they were still communicating after she found out he was cheating. And then Sharp replied, I'd be killing that young P. God. And then she fired back saying, absolutely not. When you give me a formal apology for cheating on me on Instagram Live and multiple other times, then we can talk about it. Formal apology. And then she also retorted, you never say what you're sorry for and how you're going to make it right. So I would appreciate if you could do that because you really hurt me and I've been having a hard time with it. Sharp appeared to call Doe more times, which allegedly prompts her to continue demanding a formal apology. Eventually, he said, I'm not going through this again. I've already apologized. Stop playing childish games. Doe claimed the second sexual assault happened in January when Sharp came over to her house and he was supposed to be giving her a Christmas gift only to R her again. Per her legal team, he texted her on New Year's Day, Happy New Year. Can't wait to see what 2025 has in store for us. Give 50K and I'll let you come over to my house. I thought that was stupid. And then
Look, what it is what's being described is play for pay or pay
right.
play, also sadomasochism. And it would be interesting to see if any of these requests for S&M or rough trade came closely proximate to the date she's claiming that she got hard. So, you know, it's kind of, why are you saying this? And now coming back, it sounds like a woman spurned or scorned, like he's cheating on you. So is this the reality of him R-ing you, or did you ask for this and this complaint is generated because he supposedly, how do you cheat on somebody on Instagram or Facebook? What do
Okay, so this is what happened because
I mean,
he was on Instagram Live and he forgot to turn off his live and he started having sex with a woman. So everybody could hear him having sex live on social media.
okay, so she's offended. So now this sets up classic situation. She puts it in her own words. She wants revenge for him being unfaithful to her and the embarrassment. Ma'am, were you embarrassed, young lady, when your friends who you'd been bragging about this to heard this on Facebook or Instagram? you know so you're trying to get vengeance. Well, what did he do to you that you didn't ask to have done to you? So you are telling him to do this. How do we know that it wasn't exactly what you wanted? You know what S&M is, ma'am. You know what rough trade is, and you can run down all of the slang. That's what you were asking for. May I quote you in one of your texts to him? What did you mean by that?
So it says she sent Shannon Sharpe a link to her PayPal, to which he responded that he doesn't have cash apps and would give her 10,000 cash. She allegedly asked if he would send her a picture of the money or FaceTime her with it, but he seemingly didn't. That's when she allegedly sent an explicit photo of herself with a demand. I know you missed this big juicy ass 25K for each cheek. Doe claims in a lawsuit that the sexual assault took place after allegedly rocky years of abusive relationship. Wow, whatever.
Oh, come on. Years of abuse? What was she doing to her that she didn't specifically text him about? Come on.
Right.
I
So
mean, some people get off on that, you know? I mean, that would be one of those cases that would be amusing to defend against.
mhm.
I told you about the one I had, a case I defended somebody on. I was going to ask this woman, ma'am, please, ma'am, isn't it a fact that you were in the seventh grade for 5 years? She was saying, he did this to me when I was in the seventh grade. Actually, she had been. And I said, ma'am, please, ma'am, isn't it a fact? And she cut me off. She says, all right, I admit I had sex with those five guys you got outside on the bench in the hallway. So I'm looking at my client, what five guys? He's going, did you bring anybody in? He said, no. I said, no. So then I said, ma'am, please. Later on, I was still cross-examining her. I said, ma'am, please, ma'am, isn't it a fact you had sex with four young men that evening? She said, that's a lie. It was nine. I know how many I can handle.
God.
So it's like,
I
okay.
think I think what it is, younger, older, particularly young girls, it's like, okay, you're meeting a guy he's rich or wealthy, and you want him to take care of you. You want him to spend money, but you don't know how to do it. And you think if you basically sell your ass to him, he's going to give you money. A lot of men with money are cheap. And they don't just hand out money. Some men do. It's just that, do you know how to get it? And they think because they're young and doing all this nasty sexual stuff that they want to shell out money. And sometimes that's not the case.
I had Rick James on my show doing some arbitrated, I was doing arbitration under a contract with him. And he mentioned this record he was famous for. Said, what was it? Freaks Come Out at Night?
Super freak.
Super Freak. And that's, I'm not accusing the person of it, but there are mentions of this kind of thing in
Yeah,
the
it's just like,
popular
listen,
entertainments.
I think her case is going to be hard to prove because you and him have engaged in very aggressive sexual activity. So
Rough trade.
yes, both true. So listen,
That's the other side, those that kind of like same sex to say that. It used to come up in some of the incidents they had with each other, and it'd wind up as an assault and battery case in my courtroom. But
so listen, I want guys, please hit the like button. I want to this is the last thing I want us to talk about, Trump news, right? And these are like quick takes. So guys, hit the like button. I don't have 1,000 likes, and I should, because we've been having sometimes over 1,000 people listening. There's only 700 likes, so I need y'all. I want to get to 1,000 likes, so please hit the like button and please share this video on all your social media outlets. And shout out to everybody on X. Please repost on X as well. And yes, of course, please donate via super chat if you have a question or a comment. Now, Trump news, honey. What is going on with the Department of Defense? I know you heard about it. It's called Signal Gate now because Pete Hegseth, he
you're talking about the unauthorized people getting the communications through the app. Well, the problem was, as it was laid out by some of the entities that have knowledge of these things, it was complete inadvertence and inexperience on what was going on using a communications app that was supposed to be secure. there is a glitch in the app, whereas a strange third party could come in and contact through the app and get put on a list without anybody realizing who he is or what his circumstances are. So that's like Hillary Clinton and her using the unsecured email account to discuss State Department business that got real delicate. These things happen because you sit down and you're given a memo. This is the service we're using, or this is the service you think you're familiar with, and you may not realize all of the consequences of using that. So things happen by accident. I will give you two precedents.
Oh.
There was OSS, that was a predecessor of the CIA. What they did is in Morocco, they burglarized the Japanese embassy there, and they stole the Japanese embassy's code books. Instead of copying them, they stole them. What happened is the United States Navy had broken the Japanese codes and were using it to their advantage. Guadalcanal was going on. So when the Japanese found out their code books had been stolen, they rushed and came up with a new set of codes. So instead of the U.S. Navy being able to read them, they have a place that to this day is called Iron Bottom Sound, because so many United States Navy ships got sunk with thousands of lives lost in ship-to-ship gunfights late at night in and around the Guadalcanal area because of this slip-up by the OSS, Office of Strategic Services, coming up with a dumb stunt of stealing the code books instead of photographing them and leaving them so nobody will know. That's one of the kind of crazy things. Another thing is a U.S. senator shot his mouth off and was bragging that the Japanese were not getting American submarines because they weren't setting their depth charges deep enough, because the American subs were now made out of a new type of steel with a thicker setup for their hulls. So the Japanese, of course, found this out and started setting their depth charges deeper, and a lot of American subs didn't return because somebody shot his mouth off. So these kind of things are historical, and it happened.
I want to play
it's clumsy.
I want to play this clip. Two clips, actually.
The president stands strongly behind Secretary Hegseth, who is doing a phenomenal job leading the Pentagon. And this is what happens when the entire Pentagon is working against you and working against the monumental change that you are trying to implement. Secretary Hegseth was nominated for this position because he is standing up for the war fighter, the men and women in uniform who are putting their lives on the line to protect our country and our homeland. And unfortunately, there have been people at that building who don't like the change the secretary is trying to bring, so they are leaking and they are lying to the mainstream media. We've seen this game played before. The secretary is doing a tremendous job, and the president stands strongly behind him.
And this is Pete speaking.
What do you want to say, sir, about the signal chat controversy?
You know, what a big surprise that a few leakers get fired and suddenly a bunch of hit pieces come out from the same media that peddled the Russia hoax. Won't give back their Pulitzers. They got Pulitzers for a bunch of lies. Pulitzers for a bunch of lies. And on hoaxes, time and time again. And as they peddle those lies, no one ever calls them on it. See, this is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees, and then they try to slash and burn people and ruin their reputations. Not going to work with me, because we're changing the Defense Department, putting the Pentagon back in the hands of warfighters, and anonymous smears from disgruntled former employees on old news doesn't matter. So I'm happy to be here at the Easter egg roll with my dad and my kids, because this is what we're doing it for. These kids right here. This is why we're fighting the fake news media. This is why we're fighting slash and burn Democrats. This is why we're fighting hoaxsters.
Senator,
This group, no, this group right here, full of hoaxsters that peddle anonymous sources from leakers with axes to grind, and then you put it all together as if it's some news story. And when we know it, we know exactly what it is. So I'm really proud of what we're doing for the president, fighting hard across the board, and I'm going to go roll some Easter eggs with my kids. Thank you very much.
Shouldn't he be fighting against, foreign entities and not the press?
Well, it's not unprecedented. One of our greatest generals was Ulysses Simpson Grant, or Simpson Ulysses Grant, commanding general of the Union Army at the end of the Civil War. Brilliant man. And when he started it off, he was in Tennessee, and he had been achieving victories in Tennessee when the rest of the Union generals were losing a lot of battles miserably. And his superior officer at the time was a General Polk. And General Polk was part of an old school and resented somebody coming in to do things differently. So without Grant knowing it, Polk was writing these insidiously nasty letters about he needed to be replaced. He was a drunk, all this and that and the other. And Lincoln, who was the target of these letters, wound up looking at them and saying, if this man wins all these battles while drunk, please find out what kind of whiskey he drinks and send every other one of my damn generals a whole barrel of that whiskey so they can get just as drunk and win some fights for a change. So it's not unusual for bureaucracies to do this. You've got people that have been in the military 15, 20, 25, 30 years, and then they get out and they get in the Pentagon, and they're in there so totally they've been in the bureaucracy, the military bureaucracy, for 35, 40 years, and they may have political agendas that they built up over the years that are much at odds with whoever's supposed to be running the place. So they take little snide chances and they do stuff. They send out stuff that is bad and somebody follows the recommendation and you get a mess, and the press is trying to generate this kind of thing. Now, way back when, the press used to get more information because they had a gentleman's agreement with everybody that we're not going to compromise the military posture of the United States. So you can tell us so we'll know what to stay away from, so we protect the security interest of the country. These creeps they have right now that the secretary was talking about are seeking opportunities to embarrass the country.
Mm-hmm. True.
Surplusage.
Say good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Bye.